Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to 1% Better, where we take a look at hidden stories in sport. I'm Xylon Gloats, and I'm joined, as always, by Dr. David Lipman. David, I've got your medical question for you.
Finally did your homework, mate. You finally did your homework.
I'm going to lowball you for the next few weeks because I think listeners will find value in this. So, here's your question to prove that you are a doctor. True or false? Your body can store more glycogen when you regularly do endurance training.
True. True.
Correct. True. Apparently, it increases your glycogen storage capacity, especially in the muscle.
Mm-hmm. Interestingly, you store intramuscular triglycerides as well. So people would be familiar with Wagyu steak. Wagyu steak is when they basically keep a cow very inactive and they feed it a bunch, and then it ends up with fat all through the meat and the muscle, which is meant to be it's meant to taste nice or whatever. You might know, mate. I wouldn't know. I'm not like you're the one who lives on an enormous property in Africa with lions and tigers in your backyard. Anyway, but jokes aside,
I can just hear Lion King playing in the background. That's what listeners are perceiving right now.
yeah, pretty fair from what I've seen, from what you've shown me. That's what it looks like. But so you get fat accumulation in the muscle when you do nothing, but then not paradoxically, but interestingly, you get fat just deposited in the muscle when you do a ton of exercise as well. But it's deposited in a less chaotic way so that it is able to be used by the mitochondria. It is fascinating.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So, yeah, I was going to ask, what do you mean by less chaotic way? But I'm guessing just an efficient way for it to be burnt up as needed then.
I have not seen it, but from what I understand, it's kind of like it's all through the muscle when it's randomly deposited. It just like goes everywhere, kind of like what Wagyu looks like. Whereas with these, it's like more aligned around the mitochondria in a more organized way, at least at a microscopic level, maybe not a macroscopic level.
The body is incredible. For as frustrating it is during injury, illness, etc., it is fascinating how it deals with all these things, man. Before we carry on, we have to say a big shout out to our sponsor on this podcast, Precision Fuel and Hydration. Thank you so much for being with us from the very beginning. One of the top, not one of the top fueling company in the world, if you ask us. What I love is how our listeners, how I know they at the top is that our listeners love them. On a weekly basis, listeners send us precision fuel and hydration related content. This week, I got a message from Boris Cortez on our Instagram DMs showing us a reel where precision is going to be used at a race that he's doing this week. I'm so happy about it.
Any race, mate. It's Norseman. Do you not know about Norseman?
I do not know about Norseman. Talk to me like I'm 5 years old.
It's one of the like more extreme Ironman distance triathlons. It's one of the few that the Norwegian boys, Christian and Gustav, want to do. So they jump. I think from memory, they jump off the back of a barge and they swim back into shore. They ride their bike, and then if you're fast enough, if you're in the top, I think it's 1,000 people, you get to do the second half of the marathon is uphill on trail. So a friend of mine did really well. I think she might have been top 3 woman. Or top couple woman. So she did really well in it. But yeah, really brutal triathlons. It's one of the few that, like, it's probably the only Ironman I'd consider. And the only other triathlon I would consider is the Escape from Alcatraz, although after some recent bad news there, I'm not convinced I would do that. But those are the two that I've always sort of looked at and gone like, oh, maybe those. Like if I did one, that would be the one. So yeah, I thought it was really cool when I saw that reel. I was like, that's epic. So, hey, enjoy that, Boris. I'm jealous. So, I mean, he'll be probably won't listen to this in time, but yeah, very cool.
If you want to be like Boris and use Precision Fuel and Hydration, very good news. We've got a 15% discount code for you on your first purchase. That discount code is OPB 2025. We also have a direct link in the show notes down below. And also, they've got an amazing free service where you can book a call with them and you'll hop on with one of their experts where they can talk you through fueling for your next event and help you in terms of what you need to be doing and how much you need to be taking. We also have a direct link to that calendar invite down below. How are you doing, David?
Good, mate. Good. I'm rolling. I'm back. Maybe I'm back. I don't know if I'm back, but I had a week where I didn't hate running last week. So I think that puts me at about 7 or so, maybe 8 runs in a row where I haven't hated them. So that's positive, mate. Whole week last week, had a session this morning, enjoyed it. Still not quite like aching. When you're going well, you're happy to keep going. You're happy to go further, those sort of things. I wouldn't say I'm there, but I'm not wishing for them to end in the shortest possible time and really hating it. So I'm cautiously optimistic and being cautious with my rebuilds, or I wouldn't even say rebuild at this stage. I'm still just exercising, but like trying not to push the envelope much, just being really like consistent.
What's the longest run you did last week?
20Ks. So I've been doing 19 point something. I've been doing like there or thereabouts every weekend since London Marathon.
So you're not training for anything per se right now. You're just ticking over.
Yeah,
How
I would
when
say
it comes to ticking over,
I'm I would
decide what is you're doing.
I would say I'm exercising, not training, right? So training is goal oriented. Exercising is about like getting out and moving and doing the things. So they can look the same on paper, but they're very differently motivated. So I have no issues cutting sessions short, which is like the real big thing for me. It's just like I'm hating this, I'm cutting it short, or I'm not, and I'm not doing that as much at the moment. But at the moment, what it looks like, I'm following a similar pattern to what I would be if I was training, but it's just the stuff is not as long and it's not as intense and it's not, yeah, it's like rigid. So I'm still running. I still go to gym Monday, Friday, and I still run Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. Sunday's longer, Saturday's shorter, Wednesday's a bit longer, and then Tuesday, Thursday often have some intensity in them. So it's kind of it.
Perfect.
What about you,
Sounds
mate?
good.
Where are
Glad
you
to
at?
hear you
Where are you at? I saw you doing some walking, some swimming. What's going on?
Today's not a good day to ask. I'm very, very grumpy. I saw the surgeon last week, and basically the way forward is we carry on like we're going now. There's not much we can do. I've got a bulging disc at L5S1 that is causing some nerve issues. And apart from doing the strength work, keeping mobility up, keeping moving, trying to keep inflammation down with a healthy diet, taking the supplements I'm taking, we just carry on like that for the next few months and we see what happens. But the reason why I'm grumpy is because I've been loving working with my biokinetics and actually start doing some strength work where my heart rate was going up. And I had a second session booked with him this morning, but then he cancelled and it just made me grumpy because I was actually starting to make me feel like an athlete again. So I think that put me in a bad mood. But he sent me the session anyway, and I went to gym anyway, and I did it, and I felt better for it.
Well, that's good, mate. Happy to hear you. I mean, at least motivated enough to do it on your own. And sometimes it's not so easy. So I think it's positive. I mean, we spoke about this and certainly have spoken on this sort of topic, similar lines on the podcast before. But like all the stuff you're doing now is going to be a net benefit. We're not wasting time, or you're not wasting time. You're certainly going to be better off for everything you're doing. There are certainly some people who may argue that you could get there quicker, or you could get back to what you want to be doing quicker if you have the surgery. But the surgery is not without cost, and that cost is also emotional and recovery and opportunity and money and all those things. So I don't think there's a right and wrong answer, but I would also say that there's no wasted time here.
I thank you for that. I do have an appointment with my physio this Friday. I'm taking two of my bikes, mountain bike, road bike, there with her. She's going to have a look at my position, my seated position, see what impact that has on the spine. So fingers crossed. Listeners, cross your fingers for me. Hopefully I get the green light to start do a little bit of cycling after that, bit by bit, start incorporating it because that's what I need. Mentally, that is what I need. We are supported on this podcast by Stride. Last week, we announced them as a new partner. Super excited to have them on. David, talk to me about Stride. Why would you use a running power meter?
There's lots of reasons you might use it, and Stride specifically, given some of their output. But we might, I don't want to, this isn't going to be a full segment on Stride. We're not going to do a half hour here, but simply running power is not necessarily the power you're outputting. So it's not like cycling power where you're pushing on the pedals at a certain power wattage. It is about metabolic power. So what that means is it's giving you an indication of what it's taking you to produce the speed you're at, right? So if I'm running 4 minutes a kilometer, that could be uphill or downhill, or it could be in super shoes or normal shoes. And what it's giving you an indication of is what that's costing you to produce, right? So uphill, 4 minutes a kilometer costs me more. Downhill, it costs me less metabolically, right? In super shoes, it costs me less. And in other shoes, it costs me more. So that's where metabolic power fits into the picture, right? So it's an idea of how hard you're working, which is super helpful when it comes to hills, when it comes to wind, when it comes to different shoes. You've got an idea of how to normalize these things, right? So you can certainly then use it as a tool in that respect. And they certainly have some opportunities there that we'll talk about another time. So I think where it gets put is that it's part of the Holy Trinity, right? Some people call it the Holy Trinity. Some people call it the 3 Ps, depending on who you are. And so that is internal, external loads. So internal load is what it's costing you metabolically. External load is what work you're doing. So that's pace or whatever, power. So that's cycling power, right? Or running pace or speed, right? And then internal load is heart rate or stride power, like running power. And then perception, which is what's my RPE, right? So you need to triangulate using these 3 things to understand where you're at. Are you going well or poorly, et cetera, pacing wise, and also in training, right? So it really gives you an insight into how much work you're doing, regardless of, what shoes you're in or whether you're on, different ground or ups or downs or all those sort of things. So another metric to help understand training, I guess, is what I would say.
This makes total sense to me. I know power in cycling was a game changer, and when it became more affordable, more and more amateurs got it, and I just loved it. So this makes sense to me that this is being applied to running now. I do have also on the other side of the coin, I'm frustrated that we do have this amazing partners come on board to support us, and I cannot use it. I cannot run with my injury. I would be eating up this data. I'd be so interested to know how what I'm pushing, man. I'm so it just motivates me to get healthier, to keep doing the things I'm doing, so that one day I can get back to running.
Well, it'll be interesting to see in you, because if you're using the duo, you can see side to side differences. So in you, that'll be very, very important for us as we build back in.
Yeah, I didn't know, call me ignorant, I didn't know that the nerve plays such a big role in how much power your leg puts out and how much your muscles then work. Your nerve power, like I'm using layman's terms here, but like powers your muscles, until I bumped into a friend who had a discectomy a few years ago and had lost 1/6 of the power in his leg, and his calf muscle in that leg is so much smaller than the other calf muscle.
So the way to think about this is your muscles need to be told to work. They're told to work by a nerve, right? And if the muscles don't work for whatever reason, you're in bed or they're not being told to work, your muscles will shrink. So it's that simple.
Makes sense.
And then also the rate of firing is different for different muscles. So we talk about fast twitch and slow twitch muscles. That phenomenon is more about the nerve and the nerve signal than it is about the muscle fiber itself. So how many times can we activate it repeatedly, and how quickly can that activation be there?
Interesting. Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. That's very interesting and makes complete sense. Let's move on to community shoutouts. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can do so on our Instagram page, 1% Better Pod. You can DM us there. We also have an email address down below. Coming up in this episode, we're going to talk to one of your mates. You've known him for a long time. Something a little different on this podcast. Hugh Clarke is going to join us to give us just quick insight into what high-level professional tennis looks like, particularly after that mammoth Roland Garros men's final. We're going to take a bit of a dive into that, and he gives us into an insight. And that's off the back of Simply Helen, who DM'd us and said, we know we're an endurance podcast, but sometimes we touch on other sports as well. Can we have a look into the lifestyles of professional tennis players? What do they eat? How do they train? What do time zones look like for them? How do they deal with it? So that's so interesting. Also, Alistair Courtney. What has Alistair been up to?
Yeah, he came 18th at the South Downs Way 100 miler, which is in the UK here. I saw on Strava, he was good for the first 40 miles, which makes it a very long day. So congratulations on doing so well and finishing. It had 3,725 meters of climbing, which is like 10,000-ish feet for those who work in feet. The thing that struck me here, so it took him just under 17 hours. He broke the 17-hour barrier around 16:58. So congratulations. The thing that struck me here when I looked at it was 80 achievements, including a com on Strava. I was like, that's really impressive. So he was definitely fastest on this segment, at the King of the Mountain on one segment of this race. So maybe that was in the first 40 miles.
Shout out to you, Alistair. And then Stephen Lancaster, shout out to you as well. He did the Kleiner Mountain Trail Challenge, where he was the third male and fourth finisher. Again, speaking about our listeners loving precision fuel and hydration, he tagged us in a photo holding up a precision bottle. So that got him through this event. And then also shout out to Christian Trampedag.
Yep, and Franco Carroll. Both of them ran the bridge run half marathon, which is run across the Øresundbrun, and that is the bridge that crosses between Denmark and Sweden. There's a half marathon across that bridge, so you run from Denmark to Sweden. And I'd never heard of this. I think this is awesome, and it's like on my list, my bucket list now. So Christian ran really quickly, ran 118, and Frank ran 157. So apparently it's quite windy, no doubt, like given where it is, no doubt it's windy, and no doubt it was probably a headwind in this case. So, yeah, super cool. Thank you for bringing that onto my list. And like that side note, we've been talking a lot about my running and like how I've been feeling about it. The fact that I'm interested in a race is probably a good sign as well.
Exactly. Shout out to Andreas Vegan, who did the app link Electranu Mare, was third place there, 76 minutes. Shout out to James Burke, who did the Tribesman Triathlon. And then our mate, Matthew Marquardt. What did Matt get up to?
He won Ironman Cairns, maiden victory in an Ironman. So he, for those who haven't seen, he cramped those massive calves coming out of the water. Poor dude was 8 minutes down. Then, then he went from there, raced on, caught up, I think, second portion of the bike leg. He made like a big move and then ran past people in the run. So that was good. I mean, it's the first non-Australasian man who's won down there in I don't know how long, which speaks to who normally goes there. But that's great. It's great for him. He got to travel, he got to do some time zone changes and all those things. So all the fun stuff, and he managed to perform. So I mean, he's still got his cramping challenges to solve, but positive signs for Matt.
Right, let's move on. Let's have a look at what's come across my desk. We've got a bunch of things to get through. What's happened in the world of sport. We talk about Grand Slam a lot on this podcast, and unfortunately for them, they've announced that they've cancelled this year's LA leg of their brand new, I was about to say track and field meet, but you're about to correct me. Track meet.
Yep. I mean, listen, this will be the last time we talk about it for a little while. I would suggest, given this, they've cancelled it. I think it was just multifactorial. I heard issues about the venue. Obviously, it saves a lot of money. It saves about $2 million, I think, and they want to, sort of preserve the long-term viability of the product, which I think is the right way to go about it. I'm sure part of the venue issue was low ticket sales. There's, the LA protests are happening as well, the ICE protests there, so it doesn't surprise me. They're certainly looking for more partners, and apparently they're announcing one soon, so that's cool. I'm wondering what they're going to do, but my hunch is that they're going to do a heavy US focus next year. They're going to not go to Jamaica, and I don't think they're going to go to. I mean, they were trying to get London, they couldn't get London. I don't know if they'll do that. I mean, if they go elsewhere that isn't, it's not going to be the US. I would say it would be London, but otherwise, I think it's just going to be London. Sorry, it's just going to be the US because they obviously do well in Philadelphia. I mean, if they went to Portland, they'd do really well. I'm sure if they went somewhere that made sense. Somewhere else that made sense on the East Coast, they could do it. They could go somewhere in the South that would make sense as well. Like Florida would be good, I'm sure. So, yeah, I think they'll probably do that and then double down and triple down there and then try and grow out of the US longer term rather than go international to start with. But hard to know.
I love these predictions from you. More times than not, they are right. So I'm definitely going to make a mental note of that and keep an eye on what they announce for next year. Something else we seem to be talking about every episode now is Hyrox. But this is actually relevant because something happened at the Hyrox World Championships, some controversy.
Yeah, well, so Hyrox has a number of things that happen in it. One of the things is a sled push and a sled pull. Ideally, everybody has the same thing to push the sled on, right? And this is standardized because the weight on the sled actually is an irrelevant factor. I don't know if people understand how sleds work, but sleds work against friction. And friction, obviously weight is a vertical force and friction is a horizontal force. So weight impacts friction, but it is not friction, right? Because there is what they call the coefficient of friction. The coefficient of friction is how much something, I guess, sticks or grips, right? So part of the problem they had is they had this new beautiful turf for the Hyrox World Championships in Chicago, and one of the lanes was completely different. And there is videos going around of a guy, I think he's French, blowing up about this and losing it. And I've certainly heard more than one person say it's ruined my world championships, etc. So it's really hard. They will get better at this. They're struggling with it. I heard they want to push for Olympic inclusion in Brisbane 2032. So, I mean, this is the sort of thing you have to sort out before then, because if this is an Olympic medal difference, like that's a problem. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of, if you want my prediction of whether it'll make the Olympics, it'll depend on if Australia has any good athletes, because that tends to be the bar over which, sports get included or not included.
I saw that they made a statement with regard to that, saying the rapid growth of Hyrox, and I think they said that they've standardized the turf. But if this is something you're interested in, hop onto Hyrox's Instagram page. They did make a statement and give more insight into this. In cycling news, the Criterium de Dauphine finished last weekend. It is the same. It is a race that is owned by the same organizers as the Tour de France. So it looks like the Tour de France. It sounds like a mini Tour de France, and your multiple Tour de France champion Tadej Pogacar won the race.
This is his first ever win there, and it'll be his last win there because they changed the name apparently. It's also apparently his 99th victory, which was interesting. So he won. He was 59 seconds, so basically a minute ahead of Jonas Vingegaard, who's his key rival in the Tour de France. He was also Lipovic came third, and then Evenepoel came fourth, and he was quite far behind. So super interesting. I mean, we got just under a month, is it? It's like 2 weeks, 3 weeks until the tour starts. So, I mean, it's a good hit out for them. Poggy's going to go do some work on his time trial. I don't know what Remco's going to go do, but train hard, and so is Jonas. So, yeah, I'm interested. What do you think, mate? What did you think of the Dauphiné in general and everything?
Oh, I have a question to you. Maybe I've asked you this question before. Pogacar won quite easily, relatively easily. I don't think Jonas Vingegaard would enjoy getting dropped by him. That's in quoted marks, in quotations, relatively easily. Is there anything Jonas can do in the next 3 weeks before the tour starts to close the gap?
Well, I mean, so part of the answer to that question is why was he dropped and what factors impact being dropped, right? That's actually the question, because they both have the same amount of training between now and then, and they both want to come in as fresh as possible. So those factors are kind of the same. So then the question is like, how do you get dropped? And some of that's to do with the fatigue you brought into the race. So there's a chance that Jonas came in heavy, really heavy, and said, "Don't really care." That is a chance. There's a chance there was some foxing. There's always a chance, and I certainly saw some commentary around Tadej saying he was foxing on that time trial. So there's lots of games that could be played in that respect. And then you know better than I do, but cycling's a team sport. So maybe Jonas can't do much, but Visma can as a team. And then the third factor is there's always a risk of injury, illness, crash, weird dynamics, flats in the Tour de France. So given all those things, you have to be at least open to the fact that Tadej could lose. But in a vacuum, it seems like it's impossible to beat him for Jonas now, right?
Yeah, people are handing out the Tour de France victory already now, 3 weeks before the race, 6 weeks before the race finishes in Paris. I've watched cycling for a long time, since I was a kid. Anything can happen. A whole amount of variable things can go wrong. So other teams should not be giving up. But look, we can talk about cycling forever. But did I see right? There are changes to Boston qualifying coming up.
Yeah, so the 2027 qualifying window, right, which isn't open yet. Obviously, 26 is open, 27 isn't open yet. So for that, they're going to index courses based on their downhill, the amount of downhill. So previously, you could go run a marathon on whatever you wanted, and if it was fast enough, that time was what you entered as your Boston Marathon qualifying time. So classically, people went to California International Marathon, CIM, actually a precision race, and they would go there and run fast because it's a net downhill, and then qualify for Boston there. So if you look at the courses with the most Boston qualifiers, the most Boston qualifiers are run in Boston. No one's surprised because those people have already qualified for Boston, and so it's easier for them to do so. And Boston itself is actually a net downhill. And then, CIM has a large number as well. So what they're doing, though, and there's a lot of not outrage, but there's a lot of discourse around this. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. This is going to be a huge thing. When I looked at it, maybe not so much. When you look at how they're indexing this, they're indexing it as such. Between 15,000 and 1,500 and 2,999 feet, which is 457 and 914 meters, they add 5 minutes to your time. That is the net downhill, which is a lot. There are not many races running around like that, I'll tell you now. From 3,000 to 5,999 feet, which is 914 to 1,828 meters, they're adding 10 minutes. That's trail running territory. Like when you're talking about that much net downhill, like that's a lot. And if it's more than 6,000 feet or 1,828 meters, it's not eligible at all. And so looking
Oh,
at
wow.
CIM, it's 366 feet or 111 meters. So well under that, so it doesn't matter. And obviously Boston is, I think, I should have done this, but I think it's about 200 or 300 meters net downhill or total downhill. So like it's going to fall well within this. The Sierra Nevada Marathon, which is another one of the ones that I've been thinking about on my bucket list for interest, has 2,000 meters total downhill in the first 32 kilometers. And then it's flat after that. That goes from up in near Sierra Nevada training camp, I guess, or training facility down to Granada. So I've driven some of that. That is very windy, very steep. It's like 6 to 8% for a lot of it. I think the average is 6%. So that is a
Where
lot of
did you
downhill.
qualify for Boston?
I qualified in Rotterdam, which is a flat, like it's the Netherlands. Like this is a pancake.
Just quickly, before we move on to the Diamond League, do you think this makes it more fair? Do you think this is a good call?
Yeah, I think so. I think it should certainly index for it. To be honest, by the time you're running that, I mean, maybe not the 5-minute one, but by the time you're running the one where they're going to give you 10 minutes, like it's going to be a net negative. I don't think people will be running, like, I mean, maybe if they run that. So, but then if you're going to be running that and run it fast, you're probably going to be running quite a bit quicker than that on a flat marathon. So I think it's probably fair. It certainly, what I think this is doing is opening the door for races to become Boston Marathon qualifier certified and then charge a certain amount of money for that. Because now these races, like they're going to have to know how much downhill you have. So it's going to be a thing. This is going to create a marketing opportunity and potentially a commercial opportunity for Boston as well.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Cool. Let's move on to the Diamond League. I managed to catch some of the Oslo Diamond League, but not so much of Stockholm. What I did see from Stockholm, though, is a video of Mondo Duplantis doing what he does, finishing his jump and then pulling his shirt off and running around like a crazy person, like high-fiving the local crowd. Why is that?
We've broken another world record doing what he does. So, I mean, he's still got a bunch left in the tank. If you watch this, he bumped the pole on the way up. But other than that, he cleared it by quite a bit. So he's clearly got some more in the tank. This is his home meet, so people went nuts, and it was just awesome. It's part of a really cool Swedish little period. We'll talk a bit more about that later, what else happened here from a Swedish perspective. But certainly it was really cool to watch. So, yeah, it was cool to see Mondo do that.
What other races were interesting? I usually expect a text from you. I think you mentioned something about the women's 3,000. That was good. Actually, you did send me text of bullet points of which races to go catch up on, and one of them was the women's 3,000.
Yeah, this was really interesting from a tactical perspective. I mean, so the placings were very interesting, and spoiler alert, block your ears if you want to go watch this. I would definitely go do so because tactically it was fascinating. But it's always a bit strange when you're on a 3,000 meters because it's not a very common distance, right? They don't run a lot of it, and it sits between 1,500 meters and 5,000. There is a runner from Australia called Lyndon Hall, who is a 1,500 meter runner who's run some 5,000. So it is getting a little bit older. She's in her 30s now, which is very rare for you to still be running really good 1,500s. So she's kind of half stepping up. So this is a great distance for her. And she got to, be towards the front with 600 meters to go, and then took off like a 1,500 meter runner will. So she ended up winning it, which was cool. But I was really interested in Ines Fitzgerald, who is a very young, she's like 19 years old from Britain. She came third, and she was, I think, her Diamond League debut. So that was a really good run from her. So it was interesting to see some of these East Africans get beaten and how this happened. So I would definitely go watch that if I was listeners.
I think the women's high jump was also a highlight.
Yeah, so we, in one of our very earliest episodes, we had the strength and conditioning coach for Nicola Olislagers come on, Nikolai Morris, talking about the use of gymnastics instead of traditional strength and conditioning means. Now, Nicola's she's been doing well, but she keeps getting beaten by Mahuchik, the big Ukrainian jumper. And this is always a great battle. And they went north of 2 meters. Nicola Olislagers cleared 201, and then Mahuchik struggled. She was struggling to clear and then had to go up to 203 for the way high jump works, and then missed that. So, Nicola Olislagers took a win. So it was good to see.
What happened in men's 5,000 meter?
So this is one of the other Swedish things I mentioned before. This was crazy to watch. I would encourage people to go watch this, even if you know the results. It is worth a watch. New European record, which broke Mo Katier's record, and obviously Mo Katier is currently serving a doping ban. So people are happy to see that record go. It's the 12th fastest time in history over the 5,000, and it was by Andreas Almgren, who is a Swedish runner who holds all of their records from 1,500 meters up to I think the half marathon. This guy is an unbelievable runner. It's worthwhile going to like do some research into him and listen to podcasts he's been on. He was largely solo for this whole thing, basically. At some point to get back on pace after the pace has dropped out, he ran a 2-minute 800 meters in the middle of it all, which is fast.
Wow.
Like that wins a lot of women's races. He also dropped a 58-second last lap and a 4-minute mile somewhere in there as well. So he really took it home. You could see him just driving for the line, really going for it. It was crazy. And then I obviously noticed Kai Robertson is an Australian that I keep track of, who's a very good runner. He got third there. So it was really, really, really cool. I don't actually have his time here, which is terrible on my behalf, but it was 12:40 something. I think it's like 12:40 low, there or thereabouts. I think he was trying to run 12:45. So great work there. It was awesome. Go watch that race.
We spoke about cycling earlier and what Jonas Vingegaard can do before the Tour de France to close that gap to Tadej Pogacar. His team, Visma Lease bike, have come out and said they are using a respiratory sensors, and the UCI have made a statement in reply to that saying, considering that the sensor appears to be commercially available and the data it captures does not appear to undermine the fairness or integrity of the sport, the UCI has decided to permit the use of the sensor in competition. Immediately, I had one thought. I guarantee you had the same thought. You and I used to work for a CGM company before, which the UCI did not allow to be used in competition. So talk to me about this, why they would allow this respiratory sensor. What is it?
So I wrote an article on this in my newsletter.
By the way, sorry, CGM stands for continuous glucose monitor.
Yeah. So I wrote an article on this in my newsletter. And that's the sound effect that Xylon puts in when I mention my newsletter. About why I was so excited about respiratory rate measures, because respiratory rate's really, really interesting. It's really, really sensitive. But the problem with it is you can override it. So breathing is both automatic and can be intentional as well, which is really interesting. And some people say that is a weakness of it. Some people say it's a feature, whatever. It doesn't really matter. If you are not trying to actively breathe differently, and we are just collecting data at baseline, we can get some really interesting insights from things like stress or insights into stress, as well as where you are metabolically. So most people will be familiar with different training zones, 5-zone model, whatever. I tend to talk about a 3-zone model, which is based in physiology, which is to say you have an easy, or it's actually called moderate, heavy, and then intense domain, or severe domain, sorry, is what they talk about in physiology. But basically, like zone 1 is the sort of easy. Zone 2 is between your two thresholds, and zone 3 is above your thresholds. Those thresholds, or when we talk about them, traditionally we're talking about a threshold of lactate, but it can also be ventilation, which is the number of breaths you're taking per minute, and there is an uptick in those. And this is what you can measure with these things, or partially what you can measure with these things. So one of the things that you can measure. You can also measure how deep you're breathing as well. So you can start to understand ventilation rates and all those sort of things. And then fatigue as a result of racing. So you might be able to see the fatigue of respiratory muscles, because the muscles that you use to breathe can become fatigued as well, right? And so they can become less efficient. This is why respiratory muscle training works, or the principles in which it works. So it's really interesting. Like you sent me this article, and then I ended up engaging with Jem Arnold, previous guest, on LinkedIn about this, because he was asking like how these have been approved. Obviously, we heard the statement. To me, that statement doesn't say a lot, if I'm honest. Like the statement, if you look at previously why they banned CGMs, it was about access, but then the CEO at the time said we'll give them all away for free. It was then about not creating robotic riding, and my viewpoint here is, and I said this to Jem at the time, I said it to you, I think I've said it on this podcast before, the best thing we have ever seen, and we have evidence of this, that changes the robotic nature of riding, is removing race radios. Because then there's chaos, because there's not as much coordination from the car. We saw this in the Olympics with the Dutch women's team. They should have won. They should probably have gotten the top 3 places. And they ended up, not doing that because of the chaos that not having radios provides. So there is both precedent and evidence that this might help. But anyway, I don't want to digress. basically, this is the Vital Pro by Timeware, so shout out to them. There's a few other ones on the market we've already talked about there. I mean, the UCI created this. It's Rule 1.3.006 BIS. I don't know what that is. It's the amendment. It's an amendment to this rule, which basically states that you cannot get any physiological data live at the time that may influence. I don't know the exact wording of it, but it is what it is. Interestingly, they approved Nix biosensors, which is a hydration sweat monitor, which can be used live, and I've used it. Shout out to Nix and I know the CEO and some of their staff. And then, I mean, it looks like, at least with respect to Nix, this was as part of, under the guise of recovery and health rather than performance, which is to say, if you're dehydrated, it's a bad thing, so you can recover, right? So I understand them. I mean, that's a good sleight of hand, right? A bit of a magic trick there, because like Nix is live in real time. You can see it. It can prompt you to drink. It can do all sorts of things, right? So I don't really understand. Like it's clear that there's more going on here than I understand. Let's put it that way. I don't want to.
Of course, because with that logic, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here. But with that logic, you should allow CGMs, because controlling your glucose is also good for your health.
Yep, and certainly
even in competition.
It certainly impacts recovery. I'm certainly, the CEO is pretty passionate about like decision making with low glucose levels, all these sort of things, and crashes and all sorts of stuff. So I could certainly mount arguments why this doesn't make sense. I'm not going to question too much. I'm also, and probably more, concerned about the fact that they're now banning widths of handlebars that are appropriate for women's riders. Like, I'm probably more concerned about that. So there's a lot going on with the UCI, and I don't want to throw too many stones.
They seem to have made a blanket ban for next year with handlebars and not taken into consideration how it might affect different genders differently. We will leave it there, I guess.
Don't need to say too much more here, other than the UCI be UCIing.
Yeah. Right. Again, thank you to Simply Helen for sending in this question, which led to this chat with Hugh Clarke. Helen has been a long-time subscriber to this podcast. If you are listening for the first time and you haven't subscribed yet, we will ask you to please do so. We are here for you, and we absolutely love this community. You tell us what we want to hear, and we go find the experts to talk about this. So subscribe, rate the podcast, share this episode if you found it interesting. Without further ado, let's get to Hugh Clarke. Hugh Clarke is a professional tennis coach and analyst living in Canada. He holds a Master's of Sports Psychology from McGill University, a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology with first-class honors from the University of Queensland, and a Bachelor of Arts in Public Relations, Advertising and Applied Communication from Pepperdine University. During his Master's, his thesis involved interviewing a host of top 30 ATP coaches to better understand their coaching practices and beliefs. Hugh himself is a high-level tennis player, has been playing tennis from the age of 6. 3 years old, if you count totem tennis. He played college tennis from Pepperdine from 2009 to 2012 and has been coaching ever since. Hugh writes a newsletter about tennis, and it is brilliant. It is widely read and well respected in the tennis world. It covers technique, strategy, psychology, motor learning, match analysis, and more, because Hugh believes great performance has a signal. The newsletter's fans include Jim Courier, who said, "I'm a fanboy. I've become a fan of all of his breakdowns of these matches." And it has been name-checked by him on multiple broadcasts. It is also part of many coaches' preparations for tournaments, including Kevin Confederac, former coach of Francesco Corondolo, and currently part of Team Nori. You, sometimes known as Big Dog, is one of the last bastions of one-handed backhand while simultaneously despising stepping on lines. You, welcome to 1% Better.
Thanks for having me, David and Xylon. Glad to be here, guys.
Yeah, appreciate it. That last bit is always the little cherry we leave at the end. We don't let guests know about it. So established listeners would have been waiting for that. And it's good to know. Good to see you after many years, Hugh. Appreciate you accepting the LinkedIn follow and or connection and agreeing to join us here. I thought of you straight away. when we got a question about tennis and how to break this all down. And then, looking at your Substack, I was like, okay, yeah, this is time to get Hugh on here and let's talk about it. So there's a few other people I got in Rolodexes, around the time of like, hey, if that sport comes up, if this sport comes up, and you were the tennis guy, and then we got a question. So I guess to frame this up, last Sunday we saw one of the like all-time great finals at Roland Garros. I actually watched it. I haven't been watching a lot of tennis, and I did watch it. It was huge momentum swings, huge points. Of course, there was fatigue, like 5.5 hours worth of tennis. And I guess we want to talk to you like about this because like really it boils down to, and the question we got about it was kind of like, what dictates, like what causes success or creates success in tennis? Like, what are the determining factors?
Yeah, I mean, that's the worst answer I can give is the best one. And it depends, right? You've got so many factors about play style. Obviously, the way someone like Kyrgios plays tennis is very different to the way Alcaraz plays tennis. The surface affects the bounce of the ball. So clay is like a slower, higher bouncing surface. So it enables guys who are faster and fitter and better defenders to extend rallies and stay in points more. It sort of nullifies the serve. Grand Slam tennis, like we saw on Sunday, is 5 sets. It can go, into that 6th hour, 5.5 hours. So fitness is a huge component. But I mean, there's so many factors that go into it that it's hard to say it's this one thing. These guys are so good in ticking every box, technically, tactically, physically, mentally. And I think it's just one of those sports where you can only win these things at the moment, slams, if you're literally ticking every single box. We've seen a lot of guys tick 3 out of 4 boxes, like they're technically good, they're physically good, they're tactically maybe okay, but mentally they're not there. Or maybe mentally they are there, but they don't have the physicality or the power. So it's just, we've seen for the last 15 years now, just 2 or 3 guys always at the top winning all these 5-set slams. So yeah, it depends, but definitely Sinner and Alcaraz, those guys both are ticking all the boxes. And in a way, I was listening to another podcast recently and they were saying you need a weakness to have a tactic. And these guys almost don't have weaknesses. And so it becomes just super difficult to get an upper hand against each other, which is probably why they've had so many great matches already in such a young rivalry.
Okay, so given that, let me ask it a different way. What would you say is like table stakes from an ability standpoint? Like how fast you have to serve, all those sort of things. Like what would you say is like the minimum requirement if you're looking at a tennis player to go like, he has the physicality? Like tactics, yes, you can develop. Psychology, you can work on. That's why you have a degree, right? And fitness can be worked on. But from a physicality and ability standpoint, what's table stakes here?
In terms of like serve speed, ground stroke speed, things like that?
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting for people. And also, like, is height a big factor? How fast do you need to be? How agile do you need to be? Those sort of things.
Yeah, I mean,
but particularly, sorry to catch your view, particularly height, because I remember and you're going to have to be patient with us here. I'm very bad with names. I'm not that into tennis, but I remember an Italian pro. I saw her playing doubles now recently too. She was it Wimbledon final or one of the Grand Slam finals in the last 2 years? And she's like tiny. I think she's Italian.
There's Paolini. Yeah, there's
Yes,
Paolini, young. She's quite small. Yeah, and so, look, that's the beauty of the game. You can be on the shorter side and be successful. Diego Schwartzman just retired. He's an Argentine guy who was 5'7", I think, and he got to top 10 in the world. But the trend in the last 15 years has been like the top 10, the very best. The trend has been going upwards from, when Federer first came on, most of the top 10 was, still had some sub 6 foot guys. And now, Sinner's 6'4", and moves incredibly well. It used to be a trade-off. It used to be if you're above 6'3", 6'4", you weren't the best mover. And then Marat Safin came along and he was like 6'4" and could move. And now 6'4" is like, well, you better be able to move, because that's just not that tall anymore for the top guys. So the trend is definitely tall because you can have a better serve, right? You have a longer lever, you have better angles into the court, and the serve is, still probably the most important shot in tennis, even though I think some of that importance has been shifted to the ground strokes. It's still so important. So, I wouldn't know like the exact top line speeds of these guys, but
no, that's fine.
I mean, it helps if you can max out any physical attribute you can, and you don't have to be the tallest or the fastest if you can make up for it with better technique. Or, Alex de Minaur is a good example. He is the fastest guy on tour, I would say, but he just doesn't have a lot of power. But he's still nearly top 5 in the world.
That's interesting. So I had a question here about how the sport's changed, and tactically, I guess, like I grew up watching a lot of tennis in the 90s. You had people like Michael Chang, Pat Rafter, who are playing a very different game style to what you see these days. Like those game styles don't really exist today.
Yeah.
And so I guess what's contributed to that? And I mean, you've just given a couple of examples of people who are maybe bucking that trend, who are playing slightly differently. But let's start with that. Is like, how's the game changed in that respect, and what's driven that change, do you think?
So the main driver, we used to have all these, you could be a pure serve volley, you could be a pure counterpuncher, you could be an all-court player, and you could have success and win slams. What changed mainly was that in the 90s, this company called Xylon out of Belgium started developing string out of polyester material rather than what was like the best string at the time, which is natural gut. And this polyester string is very dead. It's like very stiff, which means like you can really take a huge cut at the ball and the ball's not going to like fly on you, in an unpredictable manner. So it basically meant guys who hit hard and hit heavy topspin and play from deep behind the baseline could all of a sudden hit these angles and these shots past guys coming forwards. That sort of made serve volley, it just sort of killed it in the space of one short generation of players, So like Tim Henman and Rafter were kind of like the last top pure serve volleyers. And, even Federer, when he first came on tour, he came on tour using all natural gut, and he would serve volley when he went to Wimbledon. And then, around 2001, 2002, when he's switching to Luxilon, these strings, he starts staying back and winning Wimbledon from the back. And so it basically meant you have to be a very good baseliner to be the best player now. You can't have a bad backhand or, a weakness from the back, because it's too hard to get forwards straight away after your serve. Because you watch guys now, even on hard courts, they'll return, like Medvedev and Alcaraz, they'll return from 6 meters behind the baseline near the linesman. And if you come in, they can dip it at your feet, they can curl it down the line. And that you just couldn't do that before polyester strings. So it changed that return serve dynamic. And yeah, basically meant it's a baseliner's game. But I also think in the last 10 years, the trend is becoming, with rackets now, they're getting lighter and lighter. So it used to be guys would have, there's a metric, I don't know what the actual unit is, but swing weight is like the measure of how heavy your racket is to swing. And that is coming down. Guys are using lighter and lighter sticks as professionals. And I think that means they can play a bit closer in, take the ball a bit earlier, come forward, and use their hands in a bit of a more opportunistic way. So I actually think we're starting to see a return of drop shots and forecourt tennis and sneaking in, maybe not off the serve, but at more opportune times in the rally.
Man, that is such interesting insight. I was actually wondering about that because, like in cycling, it's very obvious the technology and advancements in the bicycle. In running, the last 6-7 years, the advancement in shoes has just been insane. So I was wondering about tennis, and I think tennis, somewhat like running, you're limited in what you can do to the technology because you pretty much just have the racket, isn't it? Is that it? Or am I missing something? Has there been advancements in the shoes? Is there something equipment-wise in training that guys have access to that has had a big impact on this?
I don't think the shoes or something else in training has had as much of an impact as just the incremental improvement in the string and the racket. And like just the fact that they can take huge cuts and take them, they can swing really quickly off more compact strokes now because the racket's that much lighter. So it just creates more opportunity. If you can swing fast off more compact setups, you can do things closer in, you can adjust later. The materials maybe make sweet spots a little bigger off the same weight of frame. So it's been very incremental, but we're starting to see how it affects play. And Sinner Alcaraz now are playing a brand of tennis that's faster and more aggressive than we've ever seen. And it's making for good watching, I think, too.
Yeah, no question. I watched that match and I was like, oh, this is actually interesting to watch now again. Because there was a period where I got really bored of tennis. Two quick questions. Rackets are still made of the same stuff? It's still graphite? Or is it something else?
The main ingredient is still graphite. And every company sort of has all this technology they plan to put into it. But the main two performance factors in a racket are weight and weight distribution. That determines how the ball is going to, be affected by the racket and how it's going to be swung. And so they just probably, and just again, very marginal, because Novak is using a frame that is from the mid 2000s. Once pros get a racket, they're sort of hesitant to switch, especially when they've had a lot of success. We've seen actually a lot of pros this year switch to Alcaraz's racket, which is a newer racket, because they're thinking that racket has a bit of an edge. And some of them have said they've had success, these guys switching to this
what's
new
different
racket.
about that racket? Like, why is that racket different?
In terms of material, nothing. I don't think there's anything unique about that racket. I just think
The player.
like pros come on tour, they're using rackets from when they were 14, 15, and they stay with that. And that might be 10 years ago now. And so they make a 10-year jump in these marginal gains that have been happening in rackets, and they realize, wow, I'm missing out on a lot of power and forgiveness here. And so I think it's more, there's nothing unique about that racket in terms of, like, if you look at the last couple of years of technology. But if you're 27 years old, you've been using something that you were comfortable with at 14, you realize you've missed out on 13 years of small little changes there.
And the string change, has that allowed for more pace on the ball as well? Because you talked about control, but is that changing serve speeds and ground shot speeds?
Yeah, it's funny. It's like it's actually like polyester is actually a lower power string than natural gut, but it's actually the lack of power that gives you the confidence to like really swing at the ball 100% and know you're going to control it. So you do see guys now with a hybrid string job where they put a bit of natural gut in the mains, like the strings that go this way and maybe polyester this way or vice versa. And the natural gut gives them a bit of power, free power on serve. Like Djokovic has it, Federer had it, Zverev has it. So you see guys trying to get a bit of power from the natural gut, but still keep that control for the ground strokes. You'll never see an all bed of natural gut anymore because you just don't have the control and the ability to swing out on the ball. The other thing I didn't mention is the balls. There's been a lot of controversy about the balls in recent years. Since COVID, they think the ball quality has gone down and like they're slowing down. The balls are getting heavier. The data doesn't really support that. Serve speeds are up in the last couple of years. But again, it's hard to know. Like, players are taller, players getting more physical. It's hard to pass out what's fact and fiction here. But there's been a lot of controversy about the balls on tour causing injuries, and they say these heavier balls are favoring the guys who can really just swing out and overcome a slow ball like Alcaraz and Sinner. So they've won 6 of the last 7 slams, and maybe there's something there. But yeah, that's been an interesting little side drama in tennis.
I wanted to ask you about the psychology of the game. I love the Netflix behind the scenes documentary that follows, the major tournaments. And the thing that stands out to me is the psychology of the players and how fragile they can be, and how that, if they're losing, they start screaming at their coaching team. The boxes, their support staff in the boxes cannot say anything right if they're losing. So I'd imagine the psychology has a big impact on the game. And in that final, even though Alcaraz was down 2 sets, to me, he still had the belief that he was going to win. And that is the belief, that is the mindset of a champion, So is that something that he's focused on heavily in the game?
Well, just to frame it up for listeners, so correct me if I'm wrong here as well, Hugh. It was Sinner lost 3 match points and all the momentum when and then Alcaraz he won the 3rd and the 4th, riled the crowd right up. Then he broke Sinner twice to start the 5th set. But then
once, I think he broke him once. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
he broke him once. Came back in the 5th set. Sinner again could have won it. He was, I believe, serving for the match. Choke there.
In the 5th, he was returning, and he played this epic return game at 6-5 up. But Alcaraz, that game was nuts. But,
and then going in the tiebreaker, Alcaraz won 7 straight, as though he was. If you told me that was the 3rd set and he was winning 2 sets to love, I'd have been like, yeah, of course. Didn't look like a guy who, I think I saw in the end on your analysis, he ended up winning 1 less point than Sinner across the match as well, which is wild. So just wanted to frame that up from a momentum swing standpoint. You have this kind of all the momentum with Sinner, then it swings to Alcaraz, then it kind of swings back to Sinner, then it swings back to Alcaraz. Like, let's talk about the psychology and momentum in general.
So one of the beauties of tennis is the scoring system, right? And so basically, like, if you want to be the world's best tennis player, you only need to win 55% of points. If you're world number one, you're winning 55% of points. And that's because when you're serving, you have that advantage of serving the first ball. In men's tennis, the serve is such an important shot. And so even when Alcaraz was down love 40 in that third set, he's on his serve, right? So statistically from love 40, men's tennis, they still hold like 15 to 20% of the time. Once you get to 15-40, it jumps nearly 30%. And so take away like the occasion, like it's match point, Roland Garros Grand Slam final. From that point onwards of love 40, 15-40, it's not like that crazy that Alcaraz gets back to deuce. And then from there, you win every second point, you're still a chance. But I think momentum is also can be explained by that psychological barrier of like when you're Sinner and you're love 40 and you got triple match point, it's really hard to like commit and play the same strategy that got him there, which was like really attacking Alcaraz, really murdering the ball and trying to like rush Alcaraz. And I think on those match points, he was probably guilty of like just getting a little bit tight, just getting a little bit, not quite as committed to attacking the ball. And as soon as that happens, like you get over aroused and you get that fight or flight response and like, or you freeze, like that's the other response. And so in tennis, that's like the footwork slows down, the racket slows down. So then you're not quite getting the same stretch reflex in the arm. So like I was saying with those strings, like the faster you swing, like the better basically, because you're going to get more spin. So it's funny, like you everything slows down and then maybe you start missing out more because you're not gripping the ball as well. And yeah, we saw that with Sinner where bravo to him because he played such an amazing, aggressive match to get all the way there. And I don't want to say he choked because on two of those match points, he put some good balls in play. But Alcaraz, like on the first one, twice he just ripped some forehands like very close to the line. And, you hold there. And if you're Sinner and you're changing ends now, having realized you've just blown 3 match points, I'd say the number one determinant of performance in tennis or in sports is like, what's your attention? Are you focusing on task relevant information? And so once you've blown 3 match points, it's really hard to be focusing on the same things you were focusing on 4 games ago when you hadn't blown match points and things were going well. You're not committing to the same tactics. Maybe you're not as committed. You're still thinking about those match points. Probably it's quite difficult. It's like getting punched in the face mentally. It's hard to like clear your head from there. And if you're Alcaraz saving 3 match points, you've got a second lifeline. The crowd's with you. You're still probably like much looser from a mental standpoint. So tennis is one of those things where it's the hardest point to win is the last one. And we've seen it time and again in some recent slams. Djokovic has gotten Federer a few times from match points down where, if you just tighten up 1%, you don't quite hit as aggressively, they can pass you or you miss. And yeah, it's you can't run out the clock. It's just one of those great aspects as a viewer. It's torture as a player, but as a viewer, it's like makes for great cinema when you get these moments.
Yeah, as soon as he won that set, I was like, we're on here. And then he wins the next one. I'm like, oh, we are on here. And so,
but interesting enough, that fourth set, like he still had to battle, like it got all the way to a breaker. Like Sinner did well. I think Sinner got up a break in the fourth to start again, or maybe. So I felt like, in the fourth set tiebreaker, Sinner got up 2-0 again. So he had so many chances and Alcaraz has brought it back.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because the game's played in very good spirits, but, you could easily see Alcaraz letting him know about it. Just to try and keep that, to really grind that in. It's like, oh, I made another one. So you could easily see that being part of it.
He's definitely more of the vocal of the two as a player. Like he's far more singing. He's very like getting the crowd involved, very Nadal in that respect. And Sinner's much more quiet and Iceman and keep things under wraps. Like you don't know if he's winning or losing just by looking at him usually. But yeah, I mean, working the crowd in that match definitely was a factor, I think, because, you need the energy, you need the support, I guess, when you go deep in that fifth. And, the crowd usually is supporting whoever's losing because they want to see more tennis, especially if it's a good match. So if you're losing, but you're finding moments to fire yourself up and fire the crowd up, it's tactically quite smart, I think, Yeah.
Sinner's Italian passport has been taken away. Very un-Italian in that way.
He's from the northern part of Germany in the Dolomites, and actually grew up speaking German. So he's almost. I mean, he's closer to Austria, Germany.
His disposition feels more German Austrian, definitely. When you learn that he was born in the Dolomites there. Yeah.
Yeah.
You say that to an Italian. I work with Italians, and then I think it was the Wimbledon final last year. He's in the final. They were like, he's Italian. He's ours. Also, another thing you mentioned there, it's the 1%. I love that you said that. I think, David, from now onwards, we need to get every guest to work that into an answer. It's about the 1%.
I didn't even mean to do that, guys. It's true, though.
Exactly, natural. Listen, I wanted to ask you about nutrition and fueling. Our listeners are endurance athletes. They love a good catch up on nutrition and fueling. The question that came in from Helen particularly was about time zones as well. Like, how do athletes with playing on so many different continents, so much travel, games going on for so long, how does nutrition and fueling look like for the layman?
Can we break it into two pieces? Go like outside of the tournament, or sorry, outside of match time, and then like in a match, because I think there'll be like that in itself is interesting.
Yeah, this is definitely not my, zone of like expertise at all. I sort of know the basics where players will try and eat on a schedule of their destination. I think even just as important as nutrition is just the sleep, like the time zone changes they make is, especially it's funny, like the better you do, meaning like you stay at the venue all week, the closer to the start of the next tournament you're leaving, right? So you might leave from America and go to Asia. If you won the tournament, you'll leave on a Sunday, you'll be playing Tuesday, even if you are a seed. So just as important as nutrition is the sleep and finding ways to like get adjusted. And I remember talking to one pro coach, and he was saying his player figured out like he literally just can't train for the first day or two after a big time zone change because it's just useless. Like he just needs to rest and like try and get his body right. So he just doesn't hit anymore when he's changing time zones. And you see a lot of pros take melatonin and sleep aids and things like that. Swiatek got done for a
contaminated
positive
melatonin
test for a contaminated sleep product. So I think a lot of them would be taking that. But like in match, one of the difficulties is you don't know if you're about to do an hour and a half match where you breeze through or get breezed over, or if you're going to do 5.5 hours where these guys are downing pickle juice when the cramps are coming on. It's one of those great unknowns. Like there's not many sports, I guess, where you don't know
how long
in terms of like, you could be out there for like 90 minutes or an hour, or you could be out there for 5.5 hours. And so, I've read the pickle juice stuff is good because it's got sodium, but also apparently it has a response to the mouth that sort of stops cramps in a way that other things don't.
There's a neurological, there's a neurological component to it. So anything that tastes like similarly shocking, it's less to do with the salt and more to do with like a reflex at the level of the spinal cord. Wow. I know the USA Sevens team for similar purposes were actually using like American mustard. So similar type of strategy, but different components. So it certainly works once you started cramping. The best thing to prevent cramps, cramps are multifactorial. They talk about a cramp recipe. There's all sorts of stuff. But the reason these guys are cramping is because of basically 5.5 hours of tennis. And they don't hit for 5.5 hours outside of a Grand Slam final.
Basically, you won't train that much. Yeah.
No.
And it's funny too because, depending when the cramps hit you, you can sort of drag out. If you're 2 sets of love up and you get cramped, you can pretty much drag out the next 2 sets and not really play. You can just go through the motions and see if like your body will like come back after taking pickle juice and things like that. But a lot of the drinks they take, they're not open about what's exactly in them too. I'm sure it's just like their own balance of electrolytes and things like that. But I couldn't give you any like insider information on exactly what they're taking or eating. I'm sure it's just like your standard carb meals before big matches and things like that. But again, it's hard to know unless you're late in the tournament when there's only like 1 or 2 matches scheduled. It's hard to know when you're going to start your match too. So these guys don't know if your third match on, you don't know if it's going to be 2 quick matches or 2 really long matches, and that can greatly change when you start a match. So I would say the sleep is just as important because sometimes these matches are finishing at 1, 2 a.m. Once you've done media, recovery, get back to the hotel, adrenaline comes down.
Doping as well, like doping control. You got to pee in a cup. Now you got to pee after like being dehydrated. So, that goes both ways. Like if you win the final and you've got all that adrenaline in that, and you're traveling, you could certainly decide I'm not going to sleep here to try and get on the next time zone. Right now, it's obviously not ideal, but also if you win a slam, you fly first class, so life's a lot easier.
And after a slam, you're definitely not playing the next week. You're taking a couple of weeks off then. But yeah, you win a small 250, or you win the week before a slam. That's often like, Djokovic actually won the tournament in Geneva just before the French Open started. So he won on a Sunday. He was playing on a Tuesday, I think. And at 38 years of age, there's no time zone change there, but that's still a quick turnaround for the body. So yeah, it's one of those things where scheduling and planning your schedule is just as important. It's just another thing to perfect and get better at as you get older.
So this brings us to training. Like, give us an idea. I mean, these guys are playing a ton. So if you could give us an idea of kind of what would a normal training week look like if they're outside of tournament season, if there is such a thing, and then what does a kind of training week look like in a tournament week, so we can sort of get some insight here, because I think that if there is a contrast there, it'd be interesting, and I think people would be fascinated to hear how much they train during a tournament.
Yeah, well, this is like one of the toughest things about tennis. I think is there is no off season really. Like the better you are, these guys leave before Christmas to get down to Australia for the Australian Open and get acclimatized. And then if you're either in the Davis Cup finals or the ATP finals, which is the top 8 players in the world, you're playing in mid-November, end of November. And so your off season might be like 3 or 4 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks. In which case, that's when players can try and get some extra strength, fix any like injury niggles they might have, definitely like maybe do a bit more volume than usual. And that's also maybe when they work on weaknesses and try out new rackets and equipment tweaks and things like that, because the reality is like they're playing so much that each week, like if you're at a tournament, the training is, especially the first few days, the training is just getting used to the conditions, different court, different balls, different weather, which is like affecting the balls. And so, so much of it is just, can you adjust week to week? And in my research, when I was interviewing the coaches that I was speaking to, they were saying how important it is to actually focus on a player's strengths during the year, because that's the shot, or they're the shots they're going to win with. And that's the shots that give their players confidence. When you're so close to competition, like you got a match today or you got a match tomorrow, the last thing you want to do is go and work on your worst shot and feel shitty about your game going into a match. So, if you're the big serve +1 guy, they're working on the serve and the forehand. And if you're Alex de Minaur, you're probably hitting a ton of returns and making sure your legs are there. But yeah, again, in terms of how much they're hitting, can depend. Like if you have a quick match, sometimes these guys right off the match go onto the practice court because they're not happy with a shot and they go and do an hour. If they have a long match, they're not practicing. They might, Alcaraz, when he won the 2022 US Open, I think he wasn't hitting on his days off in between because he had so many 5-setters and so many long matches. He was just like complete rest during that tournament, and that's not unheard of for players to just take days off at a tournament just so the recovery's there. Yeah, but it's definitely something the tour's been trying to figure out for so long, is how can they make this a bit shorter, because we've just seen Sinner take a 3-month forced off season with his suspension, and the results were pretty impressive. Like he was looking really fit and he was looking much stronger than before. And so, it'd be great, I think, if they could figure out a way to give these guys maybe a 2-month off season, because I think we would see better performances year on year, guys improving shots, guys improving physical weaknesses, guys, really actually having a moment to assess their games and refresh. And I think the quality of the tennis would be better if it was actually a little more compressed.
They could also rehab injuries. A lot of these guys, because they're playing so much, are carrying something chronic that's not terrible, but you can sort of get away with it. I remember you struggling with a wrist for quite a while, Hugh, and it's like, imagine if you'd been able to take 2, 3, 6 months off and not risk a ranking or risk whatever, right? And obviously you're at a different stage of your career, but yeah,
that's it though, right? Like if you won a tournament last year and you're coming up this year and you're going to lose 1,000 points, you're going to drop 50 spots in the ranking if you don't defend that title. That's huge from an income perspective. So that's probably a huge driver, is because there's no salary in tennis. You eat what you kill. You got to win matches and earn prize money to get the money rolling in. So that's another huge driver of players playing through small injuries and things like that. So yeah, that's a good point.
Last question we had, you mentioned before the men's game a few times. Can you give us a quick little breakdown of like how you see the match styles as different between men and women?
So, well, the biggest difference I would say is the men's game is still a serve-dominated sport to an extent. Like they hold at better rates, they serve faster. Whereas, and if you watch the women's final, I watched the semi-final between Swiatek and Sabalenka, and it stuck out to me just how return dominant the women's game can be. They're not as fast at defending and moving the court. So first strike tennis, like being the first one to take control of the point and get the other player moving, is huge. It's more important because they're not quite as good out of the corners as resetting points as like an Alcaraz or a Sinner. And so Sabalenka is the best in the world at this. She has a very good serve, but she's also very good at just on the returns or at any moment taking control of the point. And so you'll see more uneven sets in women's tennis. You'll see more 6-love, 6-1s, 6-2s because they're not as dominant with the serve. So the women's game is still more return dominant. The men's game is more serve dominant, and out of the corners, they're just moving a little better. I think there's a bit more variety in the men's game in terms of shot selection. You'll see more. You don't see a lot compared to like the 90s or something, but you'll see a bit more slice, a bit more volley, more drop shot, coming forwards a little more, a bit more spin too. There are players like Goff and Swiatek on the women's game who play with a lot of spin, and Boisson, that French player who made the semis, but typically they're a little flatter with their ground strokes too. So their ground stroke speeds are often like exceeding the men. Like Sabalenka, sometimes her forehand is exceeding like Alcaraz's speed. But if you take into account the spin, you realize like Alcaraz is hitting that fast with far more revolutions on the ball. So he's creating more shape and more angles and things like that. So yeah, there are subtle differences. And I think that's just related to arm strength or like, internal rotation of the shoulder and wrist strength, things like that, just allow the men to like get a little more speed on the racket to create that spin.
Also,
that would be the biggest.
They're also taller men, so it's going to be
taller as well,
helpful in that respect. So, but this is interesting because I just want to double click on something that was going to be my last question, but something that I think that listeners can take away from this when they're watching tennis. So you talked about gaining control of a point and what that looks like, which is moving the other person around, and you talked about the men's dominance of serving. So my take there is you probably see more men dominate or take control of the point when they're serving. It's like the serve is probably the shot that allows them to take more control. Whereas in the women, it sounds like you're saying that often the return is the shot that allows them to take more control and start
100%.
moving the other person around, which is really interesting to observe that when you think about, if we're talking about 55 points or 55% of the points is enough and something to watch at, you're really looking for somebody who can move them around on the return and perhaps hold their serve and move them around on the serve.
Yeah. And you see it like serve +1 is like basically you hit the serve, you get the short ball, and now your chances of winning the point are way higher than 55% because these guys are so good from the set piece, just inside the baseline with the forehand, they can create so much speed, angle, and then follow it in. And once you're winning 60% of the points, you're killing someone. So if you have a 60% chance off that short forehand, then you're going to hold 85% of the time sort of thing. So that's probably the biggest difference is men's a little more serve dominated, women's is a little more return dominated.
And even just the way you're talking about that serve +1 and creating I can see the way you watch tennis is not like the way that I watch tennis, which is cool to see because I have that. Well, I've watched rugby in that way, and I speak to other people and I realize they're not seeing the same things I'm seeing. I'm seeing really discrete passages of play, say 3-4 things, and I see a reset, and I think you're seeing the same thing, whereas I'm just seeing a serve and then a bunch of hitting. You're seeing, no, that's serve +1 and that's created this. And you can see it's more staccato in the way you can see it because you can see real phases, whereas I'm not seeing that.
Yeah, I guess that's just with anything. Like once you've seen more and you know a little more, you can look for you can attend to different things in the game and know how that. And it's funny, like I think even if you talk to someone else who knows tennis really well, they'll see it differently to me again. Like that's the beauty of it. Like we each see different things we pick out and value. So I like listening to Agassi because oftentimes he has some unique insights as well of the way he sees it, and it's different to the way someone else would see it.
Yeah, I think it's cool for people to hear how somebody whose proficiencies are real Malcolm Gladwell blink stuff. You can really you can start to see how people see it differently when they're proficient at watching it and playing it. But Hugh, that's been great, mate. I really appreciate you jumping on so early in the morning for you. And it's been unreal. Any questions from you, Xylon? Any more questions from you?
No. I was just gonna say a big thank you, not just to be polite, but actually that was so interesting. And I think you're gonna be our tennis guy from now onwards. No, that
happy to do it, guys. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, no, we will. We'll keep you in the Rolodex, mate. So you've earned yourself another call up. Next time we see something, or we get another tennis question, we will certainly call you back up. We have links in our show notes to your email if people want to email you. Certainly, I'm sure there's a bunch of parents who are going to be emailing you about future superstars that they want you to coach. We've got your tennis Substack in there as well for those who are interested. They may need ChatGPT to explain some of it because it is technical, but it is great. And then your X as well if they want to follow you for some mind dumping there on X.
It was great, guys. Thanks for having me. And yep, anytime after the next classic match, you can have me on and we'll do it again.
There we go. Hugh Clarke. David, how do you know you? You've known him for a while.
Yeah, I've met him in 2006, I believe, or so, maybe a little bit before then. But so I was a boarding master at a boarding school, and Hugh was a student, and ended up being He ended up being sort of head boy of the boarding house. Hence the big dog quote was like sort of it was a bit of a nickname he went by in that boarding house. So I've known him for a long time. Really good dude. Has always been awesome. Always enjoyed chatting to him. And as soon as this final was happening, I was thinking about getting him on the podcast. And then when I saw the question from Helen, I was like, all right, let's do it. So yeah, it was awesome. The psychology of it, some of the changes that we see in men's versus women's tennis, how tennis has changed over the years, why. Like, I love that stuff. I find that endlessly fascinating.
Agreed. Kudos to Helen for that question. Anything you'd like us to discuss, let us know in the DMs, let us know on email. Let's get to the doctor's office. I sent you an article. Michael Matthews, the professional cyclist, has had to pause his career with a pulmonary embolism. Now, he's someone who's been around for a long time, great success, and still been performing until recently at the highest level. What is a pulmonary embolism?
The simplest answer is it's a blood clot that has gone to your lung, which is a bad time. That is a bad thing. So there are different blood clots. Most people will be familiar with a blood clot in the leg. They can then go to your lungs. In both of those cases, one of the concerns is that it goes from wherever it is up to your brain, and then you can have a stroke, which is a real concern. Also, when it gets to your heart, it can cause its own problems there. Right, and certainly in your lungs as well, it can cause a problem. So these are dangerous things. When you've had a blood clot, you need to be what we call anticoagulated, which means you have blood thinning medication, basically. Right, so there's a whole bunch of ways that your body creates a clot, and that's important and healthy. Some people create too much. We talked about hemophilia last week's episode, which is excessive bleeding. This is the opposite problem. It's like excessive clotting. Right, so you're trying to balance bleeding and clotting at all times, and risks associated with those, because particularly in older people, you may say, well, they have a risk of clots, so we have to give them anticoagulation. But if they have a risk of falls and they have a risk of bleeding as well, you have to balance these two things, right? These different risks. But so in an athlete like this, you say, okay, well, he's had a blood clot, therefore he needs to be on anticoagulation for a period of time. Sometimes it's lifelong, sometimes it's a short period of time. You cannot do a sport like cycling if you're on anticoagulation, because if you fall, you will bleed out before anybody gets to you. Because like they have serious crashes. Maybe that's a bit extreme, but like they have serious crashes, so it's a real concern.
So is that the main reason why he would have to pause the career?
Certainly, I'd say that's why But when they say pausing, that was what came to mind. Is that he has to be on anticoagulation for a while. He has to pause. The other thing is you have to find out why he got a clot. So we talked about this with Victor Wembanyama when he was in the doctor's office mid-year and he had to stop. He's basically not played basketball since. Is yes, you have to be on anticoagulation, but we've got to work out why. So there are all sorts of weird clotting diseases, more rare and genetic based, that could be part of this. It's other unexplained blood clots could be things like cancer. So you have to go look at what's going on with these people. So they have to be thoroughly investigated. Now I'm sure that is happening for these people. They're in great medical hands, both of those people. I am absolutely not worried about whether they'll get the right answers and the right care, but you still have to go through the process. So it's a real challenge. So it doesn't surprise me he's off. Hopefully he finds an answer, and hopefully it's not sinister, and sort of best wishes.
Yeah, best wishes to Bling. He's been around for a long time. Great guy to interview, great guy to chat to. Before we go, what are we watching this week? And I have no idea what I'm watching. I'll probably be watching a bit of the Club Football World Cup just with one eye, sort of. Not really have a big eye on that, not finding it that interesting yet. I'm sure it will once it moves past the group stages. I'm working on a bunch of cycling races, so I'll be watching some cycling this weekend. What are you watching?
Is Tour de Suisse still on, or done?
Tour de Suisse will be on this weekend still. Yeah, it's only just started, so should finish on Sunday.
Yeah. I will watch. We talked a bit about this last week. State of Origin is tomorrow at the time of recording. We're recording this Tuesday, so I'll be disappointed tomorrow when Queensland lose. And then I will watch on Friday night. Paris Diamond League is on, so I'll watch that. And then over the weekend,
good to know. Okay.
On
I'll
the
catch you up
weekend,
then.
I am not too sure if there's anything on. Rugby's finished. So I mean, maybe if there's a good Ironman or a T100 or something, I might watch it. But
Before we go, I can't believe I forgot to talk about this. Do you want to watch some cricket highlights, maybe, mate? Do you want to watch some World Test cricket highlights? You were on here last week waxing lyrical about when Australia beat South Africa. Now, for anyone not Australian, South Africa from the UK listening now, just indulge us for a second. South Africa finally won an ICC trophy and became world champions, man. Beating, there's no one better as a South African cricket fan than I love them beating Australia. Cherry on the top.
I'd say a couple of things. First thing, I'm actually South African, so it's fine.
Now all of a sudden, after the fourth innings, you became South African again.
No, more importantly, one of us was a true fan and stayed faithful and had true confidence, and the other one was super negative. So just remember that, mate. I got more texts saying...
Think about 35 years of no ICC trophies, 35 years of getting so close. It is just trauma brain protecting my feelings.
Yeah, well, there is that. But yeah, mate. So congratulations. It was a good win. It's probably good for cricket, to be honest. I don't know. This World Test thing is a bit funny anyway. Like they need to work out how it works better.
Strange, yeah.
But
yeah. You can't have a 2-year cycle and then after 2 years someone's crowned a champion. It's just in this day and age, it doesn't work.
It also feels weird to only have one Test match. Like that Test match was fundamentally decided by the toss, which is fine. That's why you have a toss. It's random chance, but like a best of 3 would make more sense in that context, just to like really understand things. And it could have been a draw, and then that's awkward. So yeah.
Anyway, well deserved Proteas. Very happy for you. Let's get out of here, David. Thank you so much for putting this together. Really appreciate it, and thank you once again to Hugh Clarke for waking up early and joining us.
Yeah, thank you.